I did struggle from not having a permanent male figure in my life. Like I said, my uncles were very active. They taught me how to ride a bike. They taught me how to shoot a free throw. They taught me how to, unfortunately, in bad ways too, taught me how to hustle.
This is Dadography, a podcast with stories and insights on fatherhood from dads around the globe, dedicated to providing you with the tools and tips to become a better dad. Welcome, fellas, to another episode of Dadography. I'm your host, Corey Ward, and on the show, we really try to spend some time with different fathers from around the globe with the goal of information, education, and ultimately enlightenment to help you along your journey on fatherhood. Today, our guest, I'll allow him to introduce himself because I got your nickname. I got Philly D on the show, and welcome to the show, Philly. How you doing, man?
Really good, man. It's a blessing to be invited on the show to just talk about my personal experience as a father and the journey that I embarked on a while ago. My real name is Philip Denis, and I also go by Theo Philly because, in addition to serving as a father, I serve as a mentor and a Theo, an uncle, a unc to many, many young male and specifically males of color. So a lot of people call me Theo Philly just in general. But yeah, so thank you for having me on the show.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you, man. Let me ask you this. Let's jump right into it, Philly. Tell me a little bit about yourself.
I'm originally from Illinois. I currently reside in Wisconsin. I've kind of been fortunate to get outside of an urban area, projects area, after some unforeseen traumatic experiences. And over the past, I would say, 20 years, Wisconsin has actually served as home base and in my adopted state, if you will. But I'm originally from Illinois, born to two Puerto Rican parents that were actually born in the Bronx, and their parents came from Puerto Rico directly. And just as trying to give us a better opportunity, my grandfather and my mom and them migrated to Illinois. And then for the same similar reasons, I found myself migrating to Wisconsin and actually was able to graduate college and do some traveling around the world. But ultimately, I found myself when it was time to become a father and embark on that and fatherhood, I definitely did not want to return to Illinois and decided to make essentially Madison, Wisconsin, the capital of Wisconsin, my home base. I have two children. Their names are Gabriela Sofia Denis, and she's just turned 14 on April 30th. And then my son is Lucas Josias Denis. He just turned 13 on the 28th of March. A lot of people probably are wondering already right now, wow, those kids are literally, yeah, you heard right, 10 months and 28 days apart from one another. My wife, their mother, suffers from multiple sclerosis, and the neurologist strongly suggested that if fatherhood and motherhood was going to be in our future, we needed to make sure that the children were born as close as possible as God willing could happen. And we were very, very fortunate that we were blessed with one boy and one girl, both healthy and both currently still getting on my nerves, but they are definitely blessings. And yeah, so that's a little bit about me, where I'm at, and my children.
Well, man, I tell you what, I appreciate the transparency with what you sharing me that they get on your nerves a little bit. I know before the show you mentioned that there were some challenges even today, and we both kind of agreed that fatherhood is full of peaks and valleys, and obviously one of those days where you were traveling through the valley. But we certainly respect the journey. And hey, man, at 13 and 14, we recognize that they're growing in the area of independence and maturity. So there's going to be some static there, but that's part and parcel of fatherhood, man, for sure. Philly, take me back a little bit, brother. Help me to understand your experience with your father, being raised by him and what that was like, man.
Sure. So, unfortunately, I did have a very challenging, for lack of a better expression right now, upbringing, I was mostly raised actually by Theos. My uncles took a father figure role in my life. They were very, very influential. Unfortunately, my biological father was not active in my life for much of my life, if not most of it. He suffered from multiple addictions, including heroin. And as a result, actually, when our relationship started to try to heal, he unfortunately passed away. I did get the fortunate opportunity to sort of restore our relationship and forgive him. I did have, for a stint of time there, I did have a stepfather in my life. He was a very strong willed African American man from the South, Clarksdale, Mississippi. Him and my mom's got together when I was maybe 3 or 4 years old. He was more of just a presence. He stayed in the room. I mean, he had a lot of great qualities about the gentleman, but he never really connected with us. We never really felt like my sister, and I can speak for my sister and I. We actually, all three of us, my mom has 3 children, all three of us have different biological fathers. And for the most part, all three of our fathers never were really active playing a role in our lives. And as a result, that's one of the fundamental reasons why I take fatherhood so seriously. So seriously is because of that. I've actually
Right.
seen many times fathers can either go one way or the other, depending upon if their pops was in their life or they wasn't. And I just felt the calling. I really feel like fatherhood is a calling. And I strongly believe, just the same way as motherhood, not everybody's cut out to do it. I really believe that. I believe everybody should have the option to become a father, to become a mother in whatever shape or form that may transpire for you. But I fundamentally don't think that everybody's necessarily is called to do it, considering all that comes with it, the sacrifices, and putting a lot of your personal preferences and your desires on the back burner for the sake of child raising and rearing and cultivating them seeds. Growing up, I did struggle from not having a permanent male figure in my life. Like I said, my uncles were very active. They taught me how to ride a bike. They taught me how to shoot a free throw. They taught me how to, unfortunately, in bad ways too, taught me how to hustle. So over the course of my upbringing, I found myself in and out of trouble, drugs, drug dealing, and getting kicked in and out of high school was quite prevalent. In fact, part of my journey was getting kicked out of school after starting both ways on a nationally ranked football team, playing the tenor sax in the wind ensemble, being a part of National Honor Society just because of drugs. My growing up wasn't a reality of a big high school. In the evenings, I had a rough time on what my reality looked like every day, in and out, having to take care of a lot of things that a normal adolescent kid shouldn't have to be worried about and shouldn't have to take care of. And so growing up was quite a challenge. However, I was blessed and fortunate. Like I know, like some kids in my similar situation, they didn't thrive academically. I was fortunate that academics came easy to me. I would say seventh grade, I got suspended 13 times and was up for expulsion twice, and I still ended up going on to eighth grade with like a 3.5 GPA out of seventh grade. So I mean, doing the work was never an issue for me. It was maintaining how to even want to be in school, be present, and feel safe and secure.
Let me interject right there, man. One of the things, Philly, that immediately comes to mind, I'm like, man, 3.5 after so many suspensions and two potential expulsions, and then coming out with a 3.5. My first thought was, and imagine if your father had been more present. You know, you mentioned how, he wasn't a presence in your life growing up. You had these uncles that were they were role models. In some instances positive, in some instances not so positive. But it reminds me, and I want to give a shout out to a previous guest, JC, for a monster quote. He said, whether or not you had a father that was present or a father that was not present, you had the perfect blueprint. If your father was present, you know what to do. And if your father was not present, then you know exactly what not to do. And it sounds to me like you made the best of that situation, man. So and I guess we're gonna get right into your fatherhood style.
I would say my fatherhood style is straight up the easiest way to put it. I'm all in. I'm all in. I know one speed and one speed only. And so if my kids was getting interviewed here, I'm pretty sure they say Bobby can be aggressive at times. Bobby can be that one that's on top of us. But I also strongly believe that the kids will be able to articulate that at the end of the day, a lot of times it's Papi the one that's crying with us. It's Papi the one that's laughing with us. It's Papi the one that's joking with us. I make it a point that I date my daughter and I date my son once a month. We have a tradition that once a month is just me and them one on one. And a lot of the times I find out that they'll let me know, like, Papi, you put your mouth on me sideways, man. I ain't really appreciate that. You could have came at me a different way. You didn't have to come at me like that. There's multiple ways of communication. We need to keep that line of communication open. Like just the other day, she was struggling with an issue. And when I came home after the gym, I found a note on the couch. And she let me know that was something that she didn't feel comfortable articulating, but she was able to express herself in writing. And I appreciate that. So I try to keep the communications open, but I would have
Hmm.
to say my fatherhood style is hands on and it's all in. And I guess maybe I'll be transparent. There is a huge level of internal fear, like fear that I
Right.
don't want to mess this up. I don't want to get
Mm,
this wrong. And
right.
so I know that I can be aggressive sometimes just because if I see them slipping on something that we've been working on, I sometimes struggle with giving them maybe the amount of time and space in order for them to figure it out. Sometimes I get too overreactive in pointing out to them that, yo, we done worked on this one before. And so I'll give you a perfect example of something that kind of really almost sent me into Never Never Land. I just really wasn't feeling it. So there was a lot going on with some personal things we got going on with some family members and stuff. And so I was already struggling with that. On a side note, both of my children, I currently have them homeschooling. So they're online with me all day long. So and I'll jump into that in a little bit about I'm a stay-at-home papi, as I call it. So they're with me and I'm with them all day long. So you can already imagine the amount of stress. It could be a good thing on some days because it's a lot of love and we cracking up and we get to do things that maybe other parents and their children don't get to do. But overall, it still might be stressful. And I would have to say, if the kids again were being interviewed, they would say, "Yeah, it's a lot to have your dad on you. The dad just around you all day long. Like school sometimes was a break for many kids." And so my kids are in there, both in their rooms, sitting at their desk, and they have their dad floating around upstairs throughout the day. So one of the biggest things of my fatherhood style is teaching the kids consistency. That's one of the biggest lessons that I think that I could share to any father. It's in those little moments of repetition and consistency that whether it's an athlete, whether it's your child, or whether it's your career, a chef, a teacher, whatever it is that you're doing, is consistency. And one of the things that I never saw in fatherhood and even many adults in my childhood growing up was consistency. And so one of the things that man, I try my hardest is to ingrain in the kids, to try to embed in them the seeds of consistency so that over time we cultivate that it's second nature to them, that you waking up at this time, you eating lunch at this time, breakfast at this time, and you pretty much know. And then when life throws you a curveball and you have to be spontaneous or you have to be open minded and be fluid with it, that you're able to jump back onto your routine, that it doesn't throw you off like it does so many adults in life in general. So anyhow, I came upstairs. My son asked me for something as simple as earlier in the morning after
Uh huh.
breakfast, he wanted a donut. The routine is they wake up in the morning. I have to have him a half an hour, 45 minutes in front of the computer reading a book and have it check the internet. Let's check online. We got to go through this whole process to get him ready to start his day. Okay. He needs
Right.
that structure. It's that way.
He needs
So,
that. He needs that to help him get his engine started, able to move
right,
forward. He's got
right.
he's got the program in place. That's his compass, essentially.
And once he gets his own engine going, and I just facilitate that, he's off to the races. And
Right.
I normally don't have to ask him if he did his homework, if he followed up. He just once he's going until the mission is complete. So anyhow, my son decides to ask me. Back to the story, he decides to ask me for a donut. I didn't pay attention to exactly what time it was, but he was asking me for more and more snacks. The rule is, and a part of the day is, they wake up, they make their own breakfast. So Monday through Thursday, breakfast and lunch is on them. There's a structure. They set up their own menus, whatever they need to do for them, because that's what keeps this house moving smooth. And so my son basically tried to get away with a quick one by getting a donut and then turn around and on the verge of lying to me that he had lunch. And I could tell he didn't have lunch. So he was just upstairs just trying to snack. Now that might sound like something so minute to other fathers or other people listening in, but that might sound like something like this guy got to be kidding me right now. He's
Right. It's a
complaining about
donut.
his. It's a donut. No, it was the principle of it because he decided he wanted to take a shift off, whatever he was doing, goofing around in his room. On his normal breaks, he's supposed to have his lunch. We got stuff prepped for that. He knows what to do. He was over the room being a 13-year-old, sure. But you got one job right now. You in school. So after school, we can talk about you goofing off and doing what you want to do. Right now, you are in school. And so basically what he wanted to do was trick off like at lunchtime. He was just skipping out, and then he was inches away from lying to me until I got in front of his face. It's a different ballgame. When I had asked him from downstairs, he was giving me all kinds of excuses. I had to go upstairs and look him in the eye, and that's when he said, "No, Papi, I didn't have lunch. I was just sneaking snacks." So now he actually admitted he had been sneaking all kinds of snacks all morning long. So he was just sitting in his room in class, just eating away all kinds of snacks as if he wasn't going to get caught if he didn't know any better. And that's the thing. For me, it was a learning opportunity to check him. It wasn't about the donut. It was the principle of it. It was the principle of you knew you had certain things to do. You were conscious enough to know that what you were doing was going to get you in trouble. You still proceeded to do that. And you then admitted that this wasn't the first time you had done that action today. You had
Right.
been doing it
Right.
multiple times. You just happened to get caught this one time.
Right. It sounds to me like what's happening here too is, you mentioned earlier a lot of structure, you know what I'm saying,
Yeah,
discipline,
right.
that type of deal. So not only is there the almost lying, but then there's the matter of just breaking the discipline. Let me ask you this, Philly.
Sure. Yeah,
Taking into account your upbringing, right,
yeah,
between the biological father that wasn't present, the stepdad, and then the
yeah,
uncles,
yeah,
like, what do you think from your experience? How did you come to be the father? Like, what from those experiences? And it sounds like just kind of almost like a very typical urban upbringing, where maybe in the streets, a little bit of
yeah.
hustling, a little bit of So
Mhm.
how did you get to be able to, I don't know, as you to use your term, stand on this square of the type of father that you are? Like, what are some of the contributing factors to that, man?
A couple of things. So, as a result of my best friend, one of my best friends dying in a drive-by shooting over some things that we had got into, I actually left Illinois. Then I got into some more trouble up in Wisconsin, and then I was essentially homeless for some time. I was sleeping in the park. I was driving a
Okay.
forklift. I didn't want to let my family know that I was back in trouble again. I was 19 years old, and I happened to go say, you know what? I knew I was smart. I knew I had things I could do. I decided to sign up for the GED exam.
And so let me interject here, because our guests are from all over the world. So GED is an acronym for General Education Diploma. For those of you that are not familiar with the U.S. Educational system. Okay, go ahead, brother.
It was an opportunity now that I was over the age of 18, I could take a standard test or whatever to demonstrate I had skills in order to be in the same ranking, if you will. And I befriended this older white lady that you could tell she was blown away. She was just floored with my entrance exam. I essentially, out of like 150 questions, I missed one question. And she just asked me, "Have you been in college before? Have you been, why are you taking this exam?" And I kind of just shared a little bit of my story with her, what I was going through, and then she kind of got teary eyed and said, "Young man, if you would let me help you, I would like you to sit for the ACT exam, and I would like you to apply for college."
Major transition in your
Yeah,
life
I'm
right
I'm
there.
actually tearing up because it was a point in my life where I didn't think anybody cared anymore, and here's this
Mm,
stranger that saw something in me that I thought was no longer there.
mm,
And lo and behold, I actually sat for the ACT. I think the top scores are 32 or 34 at not even being in school. I scored a 28. I ended up getting into a junior college. And that's kind of where things really transitioned for me really fast.
Corey here, wanting to give you a personal invitation to follow us on Instagram. You can find us at Dadography Podcast. It's really good because you get an opportunity to put a face with the voice that gave you some insight or some encouragement on your journey in fatherhood. We look forward to having you follow us on Instagram at Dadography Podcast. Well, thank God for people out there like her, man. Helpers,
Yeah,
people that are able to identify, potential talent and just have some genuine concern and do what they can. And I would encourage fathers that are out there. If you're not involved in any sort of mentoring program, that's cool. But if you see a child, whether it's your child or not, and there's an opportunity to just share some sort of encouragement or guidance, do it, man, because
yeah.
here we are having a conversation with a father who's all in. And to me, so far, Philly, and I don't want to overstep, but it sounds like she was a very pivotal point in contributing to who you are today, which ultimately affects who you are as a father, which ultimately affects your family and your kids.
I agree. I went back years later to see, I believe she had retired and she was quite older at that point in time. But the 1 or 2 weeks of interaction between her and I allowed me to eventually get accepted into technically considered an out of state school because I was originally from Illinois, which brought so many other problems of out of state tuition, more expensive tuition because I wasn't a resident, all of these obstacles that were coming my way that I had no one really to help me navigate through any of that. And I believe divine intervention played a very big role. And I linked up with some community members and some church people from a very, very small town. And lo and behold, there is one Panamanian, Afro Panamanian brother that was at that university that is my best friend now. And he talked to me about Panama. We got connected. And essentially, I got connected to a whole host of families and community members that I never saw coming. And for the next 3 years of my life, I got to see what it was for people to sit at the dinner table together to give grace. I got to see fathers go hunting with kids and go play basketball. We built basketball courts. We went on mission trips to build homes and we just did a whole host of positive things. And every time we were doing these things, there was no drugs, there was no alcohol, there was nothing involved. It was just pure, clean fun.
So this is a total 180-degree turn from your experience,
Yes,
and these are
I
all
had never
contributing
seen nothing
factors.
like that. I had never seen
Yeah.
nothing like that, man. Not like that. I never seen a man kiss his wife and just specifically again consistency having a routine of every Sunday evening they would go on a walk. That was just their routine. The father figure that I'm talking about and the mother figure, they would go on a walk every Sunday evening, afternoon for more or less, kids would come from home from college that weren't even their kids.
We're getting somewhere. We're getting somewhere now, Philly, because
Yeah,
what you're seeing, right, at
yeah,
this time,
yeah,
it sounds to me you're seeing a lot of routine, you're seeing
yeah.
a lot of structure, and I can
Right.
see how now this then begins to manifest when you start fathering. Let me move forward just a little bit, man. Let me ask you this because you mentioned something earlier, and I'm real curious about it. You mentioned that you're a stay-at-home dad, to use your term, stay-at-home poppy, right?
Yeah.
And
Right.
some roles usually change with regards to partners, but what
Yeah.
about the roles with regards to fatherhood? How did you end up in a situation where you're a stay-at-home dad? And what is that like, in the marriage? Is it weird when it comes to being the dad? You know what I'm saying?
I mean, it's still taking some getting used to. I worked for a big international university system for over 18 something years. And
Oh
so,
wow.
as a reason, back to going to my experience with the university, that experience of that lady that mentored me, that encouraged me, I created pre college pipeline programs for inner city youth from Chicago to Milwaukee to rural areas all through the Midwest. I had been a director, I had been a program manager of pipeline programs that reached out to at risk youth. What I was given, I spent 18, almost 20 years of my life creating and cultivating and writing grants and doing all kinds of stuff.
Thank you for that, brother. Thank you
Yeah.
for that.
And that being said, I was getting burnt out. The system was taking a lot of ups and downs and turns. Okay. And not only that, my mental health started to suffer. I found myself being depressed, being angry and bitter with about the things that I had been building, that I had been a part of community. I was specifically angry with how systematic racism and oppression were pitting communities of color against one another, fighting over limited resources, and it was beginning to have an effect on all areas of my life. So I had to have this heart to heart with myself. It wasn't really worth it. And it just so happened that right about 6 months before COVID hit, again, talk about divine intervention, somebody looking out for you, man. I said, you know what, enough's enough. And about 2 weeks before I decided enough was enough, my daughter got in trouble at school for defending herself because she had about three girls wanting to jump on her and bully her. And that was it. I talked to the kids and everything, and I said, you know what if we can do it? I don't have the answers. If you down to go on this mission with me, we could do this. But I do not have all the answers. There's going to be good days and bad days. How about we take this year and go into the summer where I get you guys at home. We learn online. We can take field trips. We can go visit family because all we need is internet and a laptop. I have the licenses. I'm an educator. I've been doing this for many years, and I've been helping other kids in other communities and other family members. Why can't I just do this for my own? And when I made that decision, it was one of the best decisions of my life. I mean, I actually
What was the feedback, brother, from your wife? I mean, that's a huge decision. Let me just say that. That's a huge decision.
the way we parent and have it set up is she she was a stay-at-home mom for 14 years essentially, and she finished her second master's degree. She's an educator herself. She herself is a middle school teacher, and so she wanted to get back out and work. She wanted to do something, and so she said, if you're going to take the kids on full time, I can go back into the classroom full time. Now, we knew that there was going to be some financial challenges and whatnot. We had to talk it out and work it out, and that's still a work in progress. The kids, again, as tough as it is, my daughter's rocking a 4.0 and my son is rocking a 3.9 right now. The semester is going to be over in about 2.5, 3 weeks,
Hmm.
and I've been fortunate as a stay-at-home dad to pursue quite a few entrepreneurial dreams of my own. I became a personal chef, and I'm a professional chef and a caterer. I have more contracts for the summer with quinceañeras, weddings, graduation parties. I have so many opportunities coming for the summer
That's
that,
awesome.
and I had to take that leap of faith, and then it also gives me an opportunity for the first time ever. I'm coaching little league baseball with my son. He plays. So if I was at the university and grinding, running all these summer programs, I would have been helping other kids, which was a great deed. Don't get me wrong, but I wouldn't have been able to have that time with my son. And I feel like I'm looking forward to, for the first time ever, me being able to be on the sideline with my son.
That's sweet, man. And the reality is, it shouldn't be when we think about contributing to the community. I don't think it's one person's responsibility. It sounds like you've done your part. I think
Right.
the goal is for us all fathers, specifically because this is a fatherhood show, for fathers to be able to contribute to the communities they're in. It sounds like you've been involved ever since you got some assistance from the lady after you transitioned to Wisconsin in some sort of cultural and community initiatives. How do you present that to your kids, man? Like, do you encourage them to do the same, or to kind of be involved in the community to some degree or another? Or is that something you're postponing to later? Or how does that go?
No, I mean it's a family affair. I always believed in that. My kids, when we head back down to Panama, whenever God willing, we get the chance to go back and be with family and community. Uh, we go into the indigenous villages and we try to give back. My kids have been fortunate just because of my career path and their mom being international and me having traveled the world throughout my collegiate experience, that we're a very international focused family. We constantly give back. My daughter has come with me during COVID. I was a frontliner, so I got vaccinated right away. There's a plug out there for people of color. Man, get vaccinated if you get the opportunity, man. We need to keep our community safe and healthy. I got to work at soup kitchens, feeding so many families, people you thought that would never be in line looking for food, needing food during this COVID. It affected all walks of life. And so I was fortunate that I was asked to cook meals and I got to cook and serve. The kids constantly are doing that with me. My son, he has certain obligations as a part of playing little league baseball, that they have to be out and about and be visible in the community, being a positive impact in the community. And that's something that I think both of our children have always seen firsthand. My kids were raised in a community program, and so they were constantly with me. When the hurricanes hit Puerto Rico, we were collecting water bottles. It was my kids unloading and unloading trucks with me as we were collecting donations on the university campus. It's my kids packing up canned good boxes and stuff like that, and they never seen it as work. They just seen it like we get to kick it with Papi. We get to hang out with Papi. So they never really seen that at work. And I keep a positive spin on it. You get to provide something for somebody that may not have it. Their reality is not my reality growing up. They didn't grow up nowhere near anything that I grew up with for good reason. And so I try to let them know that it's moments like these that help Papi out of his situation, and that's why I always want to keep that at the forefront of everything that I do, and try to show them. Yeah,
Yeah. Hey, so I want to detour just a little bit
sure.
as we come to the close. You
Yeah,
mentioned your daughter having some challenges with bullying. I think bullying in today's modern world with the technology is probably more prevalent just because people can touch you a little bit easier if you have a social media account, etc. Right? So, what encouragement would you give to dads who are, needing to guide or direct their children as a result of being the victim of being bullied?
first and foremost, take a deep breath. Just innately, man, I think parents, because do not get it twisted. I don't know if I was the one that was going to pop off the most or their mom was going to pop off the most. That Panamanian lady was not happy, and she was in the school already. She was about ready to lose her job as a teacher. Forget what you heard. She wasn't worried about that paycheck when it came to her baby. So I think first and foremost, take a breath, take a moment, try to get as much information as possible, because I found myself ready to pop off and I didn't have all the facts. It was this he said, she said back and forth. It was this
Right, right.
902 and what junior high kids do. He said, she said this. He didn't like me, or he was looking at me, and she didn't look at me, and I never said this. And it was one day you're friends, and the next day you're enemies. And at one moment that we sitting at the lunch table together, the next minute we finna jump you outside when it's recess time. I found myself like ready to run up to the school and pretty much have the principal on a platter. I was not a happy dad. I got that phone call and I didn't know what to do. I did, after taking a deep breath, bringing my daughter home, I decided that for the sake of everybody, until I can get to the bottom of this, I decided that I was going to take my daughter out of school for a week. I was at least going to give it a week. I was going to take her out of school for a week. Within that week, I was going to do my own research, my own investigation. I was going to meet with the principal and the guidance counselor so that I can learn maybe if other things with without my daughter being present. Then I was
Right,
going
because
to bring
it's two sides to every coin.
exactly. So then I wanted to then bring everybody together, and ultimately, I did have the principal's blessing, and they wanted to keep Gabi in school. And I said, ultimately, I think given given the amount of time that's left in the semester, given what's at stake at this point in time, I I don't have the answers right now, but I'm gonna go extend my daughter another week. I got to see some things that I was unaware of that were going on in her life. I got to witness some of the challenges, mental health issues, image, body image, self esteem, identity, things that she was suffering through, and it allowed me to get a better perspective. And ultimately, we came to a joint decision as a collective, and it was a group decision, and it was the best decision that we could have made at that point in time, because I was unwilling to lose my daughter as a result of just circumstances. I really didn't have the answers at that point in time, and it was a tough one. I mean, it was a tearjerker. It was sleepless nights. What am I going to
Mhm.
do?
So if we were to summarize the encouragement that you give to dads, and I'm making notes really for myself, but I'll share what I got here for the sake of the others that are listening into our conversation. One, we're gonna take a deep breath and kind of inhale the situation where it's at. The next step we're gonna do is investigate, because there are two sides to every story, and then
Right.
based on being calm and doing our investigation, at that point we're going to take action. And in your case, the action that needed to be taken was to get her out of school, but that action may be different in every scenario, and I appreciate you for that insight. This is the part of the show where we just do like a self assessment, right? So what are some of the fatherhood challenges you faced, and what are you doing to try to help or overcome them and become a better dad?
I'm very hard on myself. And so sometimes I don't give myself enough credit as to how far I've come and how much further I desire to go. Like how much better as a pops that I want to get. So and it comes off in a way where I am not proud of how some of the things that I say come out my mouth. I'm not always proud of how I articulate to the kids that I'm disappointed not in them but in what they're doing. My feelings are hurt. I try to let them see that I'm angry about the situation and you hurt my feelings. Like I don't want you to self-loathe, but you need to know that you hurt my feelings. I took that to heart. I took that personal. And I don't always communicate it that sophisticated. And sometimes as pops, I just pop off at the mouth and just let them have it. And I'm not always proud of that. Sometimes I say things that I can never take back. They're hurtful and not making excuses, but that essentially when that happens, I get caught in the moment and it
Hmm.
takes me back to how I was spoken to. It takes me
Right.
back to how my mom put her mouth on me, how my uncles put their mouth on me. And I still remember vividly certain things that they said to me when they said to me what I was wearing. It was traumatizing in so much that I could go back to that moment at a drop of a dime. And I'm afraid that that I can input that into my children. So that's something that I'm focused on, that I'm really, really working on right now.
Well, thank you for the transparency, and for the dads that are listening, be encouraged to, do a self-assessment and see how you're doing in that area. Be mindful that what you say and how you say things to your kids can travel for years in their mind and have some effect. So lastly, Philly, what's something you're doing right, man? What's something you feel like, you know what, in this area right here, I'm getting gold medals.
Well, I'm all about experiences with my babies. So one of the things that I do with the kids is I try to stay somewhat active and out and about. It's very important, and my situation is a little bit different in so much that the kids are at home with me all during the day. But we kick it. We go out. We have experiences. We go hiking. We ride bikes. We sit and play board games. We have a very competitive family. I do not let the kids win on nothing. So we play board games and we get it in. And we turn the TV off. We'll put on some jams or something. They put me on to the new music that I be cracking up laughing that they call it music and stuff. And I recently turned 40, so I'm feeling a little bit getting a little rusty here. So I want to make sure that I'm myself active. And so I try to just do things with them. We go on road trips. We go randomly on road trips where I won't tell them where we're going because I don't really know where we're going, and I'll just literally say, "Let's ride out," and we'll go see something that we never saw before. Even sometimes if it was driving 2.5 hours, 3 hours to get an ice cream cone. And we coming back, and they sleeping in the back of the car. I try to mix it up with them. I try to have experiences with them so that they have those experiences for the rest of their lives, not necessarily the possessions, but the experiences. I feel like I doing really good on that note.
Yeah, if it's all right by you, I'm gonna take that page out of your book and put it in mine, and make sure that I'm capitalizing on the experience, Philly. Well, man, I want to thank you for carving out this time and being on the Dadography podcast with me today. Really enjoyed the conversation. I feel like I've grown a few feet as a father, and I look forward to implementing some of your strategies. And hey, man, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you for coming on to the Dadography podcast, man.
Thank you very much, and God bless, and keep the good work.
I have to say, Philly, with all the sacrifices being made, fatherhood is one of your callings. Remember, you don't have to be a father to be a father figure. But if you take on that role, be responsible about it. Teach your kids to be consistent in whatever they set themselves to do.
Take time out to have one-on-one moments with them. A lot could be learned about how they are doing and how you are doing. Don't forget about the different communication channels. If talking about it isn't their strength, then maybe a letter or an email can be a start. Be open to this, and be open to not always having all the answers. We are fathers. We are not Google.
Help others if possible, and that is always possible. Teach your kids to do the same.
Check yourself and be sure to not pass on some of the traumatic things you experienced as a child.
Last, but never ever least, do stuff with your kids. Experiences are better than possessions.
That's right, little buddy. What are we doing today?
We are going to the playground.
That sounds like a plan. See you guys next week.